Following the Donovan Mitchell trade, the Eastern Conference is arguably more stacked than it has ever been before, with, in my eyes, there being 9 teams who should very clearly be making the playoffs in this upcoming season. You have, of course, the obvious locks, the Sixers, Celtics, Bucks, and I would throw the Miami Heat in there as well. Those will likely be some of the top seeds, and I would even put the Cavaliers in there at this point. There are 5 teams who I would, be beyond shocked if they miss the playoffs. However, after those 5, there are 4 more, being the Brooklyn Nets, who we've got to wait and see what their season looks like if they end up being a complete disaster or they manage to get it together. The Toronto Raptors, who don't have a ton of depth but do have one of the best and most well-rounded starting 5s in the league, as well as one of the league's best coaches and systems. The Atlanta Hawks, who just got DeJounte Murray and now have an all-star backcourt of him and Trae Young, as well as some decent depth around them. And of course, the Chicago Bulls, a team who started last season flaming hot before falling off due to a mix of injuries and some players just kind of falling back down to earth. And unfortunately for Bulls fans, let me be clear, this is not by any means a guarantee. I will not be surprised at all if Chicago makes the playoffs. But looking at the competition right now, if I had to place my bet on one of these 9 teams to miss the postseason, my money would unfortunately have to be placed on the Chicago Bulls, and there are 2 main reasons why. First of all, DeMar DeRozan, I think, had a bit of a fluke season last year. Not to say he isn't a great player, he's been a deserving all-star for a long freaking time now. But last year, DeMar DeRozan was one of the most clutch players in the entire NBA. His clutch stats were off the charts, and there were a whole bunch of wins that he stole almost single-handedly from the jaws of defeat by hitting some absolutely ludicrous shots at the end of games. And if you compare what the Bulls' supposed record would be with their net rating to what it was, they finished 6 wins above what they were expected to, and a large reason for this was the fact that they were much better than the average team in the clutch. DeMar DeRozan throughout his career has not been known as the world's most clutch player. Not that he's necessarily been known as a choker in the clutch, certainly a playoff underperformer, but we're just talking about the regular season here. However, for DeMar DeRozan to perform so absurdly well in the clutch is something that I do not expect to continue, as well as his just overall stat line. The man scored 28 points a game last season on a little over 50% shooting from the field, which would be an incredible accomplishment for any player, but it is especially nuts when you consider that DeMar DeRozan was 32 last year and has never come close to that kind of production in any previous seasons. That was far and away the best year of his career, and players don't generally peak at age 32. Plus, with LeBron's insane longevity, people seem to forget, most players start to fall off once they get into their early 30s. I don't think it's reasonable to expect DeMar DeRozan to play at the same level he did last season once again, and that's totally fine. DeMar DeRozan does not need to be a superstar on offense for this team to be really good offensively. It should not be his job. If he is a normal all-star level player, Zach LaVine keeps doing what he's been doing, and Nikola Vucevic finally figures himself out because he has been all over the place since getting to Chicago. If those 3 players can just do their thing normally, DeMar DeRozan doesn't need to step up, he just needs to be himself. My bigger concern for this team, however, comes on the defensive end. Even if Lonzo Ball comes back soon, which at this point, we have no idea what's happening with him, right? Nobody knows what's going on with Lonzo Ball. There have been different reports from every source. Maybe he's only going to be out a few weeks. Maybe he's going to be out the entire year. We just don't know. He's a big factor for this team on both ends of the floor. But even if he does come back, he is your best defender. Patrick Williams is your other significantly above average defender, and Alex Caruso, while being a pretty good hustle guy, I'm willing to say he's slightly above average, but let's be real, people acting like he's some kind of amazing defender who should be making all defense teams, have never seen him switched onto a player who's not another guard, alright? The dude is so small, he is not a versatile defensive player, he just hustles a lot. And hustle means a lot on defense, but you still have basically 2.5 guys who are really good defensively when Lonzo is healthy. Assuming Lonzo is not healthy for most of the year, it falls entirely on Patrick Williams and Alex Caruso to carry this team's defense. We have been saying for years that Zach LaVine should be a good defensive player, and he has definitely taken some steps in the right direction, but I'm still not willing to call the man a positive. He's god-awful off-ball, he loses focus of his man, and a lot of times he's just frankly kind of a lazy and low IQ defender. DeMar DeRozan is a terrible defensive player. Nikola Vucevic is a terrible defensive center. I know he had a few highlights last season where people were like, oh, Nikola Vucevic is actually pretty good. He's not. Once in a while, he can pull off a pretty good defensive game, but overall, not a good defensive player. And Andre Drummond coming off the bench, that was a big signing for Chicago. They desperately needed some rebounding. They were one of the worst rebounding teams in the league last year, and he will help with that, but he is once again a dude who just isn't going to do that much for you defensively. There's hope that their draft pick, whose name is Terry, I believe, he could be a good defensive player, but I'm not willing to sit here and bet that the 18th overall pick is going to save your team's defense. As of right now, this team's probably going to be pretty bad defensively. Like, bottom 10 in the league, maybe bottom 5. They're not going to be a good defensive team unless Patrick Williams has a big leap and Lonzo Ball comes back sooner than later. So with all of those things said, while I could absolutely see Chicago making the playoffs, I know this has been a negative video about the Bulls, and I want to be clear once again, this is a team that should be making the playoffs, that should be winning well over 42 games, close to 50 honestly. They have 2 clear all-star caliber players, they've got some great young players when healthy. This is a very good team, but the Eastern Conference has arguably never been deeper than it is going to be in this upcoming season, and when I compare them to the other teams on the list, obviously, Sixers, Celtics, Bucks, Heat, Cavaliers, all better teams than the Bulls. There's no logical reason to assume the Bulls will be better than any of those 5. The Brooklyn Nets are going to have a ton of dysfunction and issues, I fully believe, but they do still have Kevin Durant, and as we saw last season, Kevin Durant on his own can still carry a team all the way to the playoffs. The Hawks and the Raptors are the other 2 real contenders, and I could absolutely see either of those teams missing the playoffs as well. I want to be clear, the edge that they have over the Bulls is very minimal, okay? I will not be surprised whatsoever if Chicago gets a 6th or 7th seed, and either, even with Brooklyn, with how much they're going to implode, if any of Brooklyn, the Hawks, or the Raptors miss the postseason instead. But Toronto has been incredibly consistent ever since getting Nick Nurse, and while I don't think they're a deep playoff threat, I do think they can consistently win 45 to 50 games as long as their lineup is healthy, and Atlanta now has Trae Young and DeJounte Murray in the backcourt, probably the best backcourt in the entire NBA, unless Tyrese Maxey really takes a leap and James Harden gets himself back in shape. And they have, I would say, a pretty similar offense to the Bulls, and potentially a similar level defense. They're really neck and neck for me, but my thing basically comes out to Trae Young is the best player on either of those teams, in my opinion, and that is why I would give them the edge over Chicago. Could very easily be the Hawks missing the playoffs instead. But as of right now, I think that as good as Chicago is, and this should absolutely be an above 500 playoff team in the East, I think that the Bulls may be missing the playoffs in 2023. But let me know if you think I'm wrong, let me know why, and tell me who is going to miss the playoffs in the East instead. Thank you for watching.